Welcome to our deep dive on the art of seduction. It looks like you're interested in learning about the strategies and psychology behind seduction. You provided excerpts from Robert Greene's audiobook and some historical examples of seducers throughout the ages. So let's uncover the secrets from the subtle to the scandalous.
It's fascinating to see. These historical figures, though separated by time and culture, use similar tactics. What they all understood was that seduction relies on understanding the target's psychology, what they secretly desire, and how to fill that need.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with this iron archetype. Cleopatra, Pauline Bonaparte, and Marilyn Monroe. They all embody this. They use theatricality and allure, but also strategic reveals. Strategic reveals to capture and hold attention.
Cleopatra is a great example. The way she orchestrated her first meeting with Caesar, arriving rolled up in a rug, pure theatrics. It immediately sparked his curiosity and set her apart from anyone else.
It's like she understood the power of creating a grand entrance, making a lasting impression.
Exactly. And she maintained that mystique throughout her reign. She understood the power of selective disclosure, never revealing too much, always keeping her audience guessing.
You know, this idea of selective disclosure. This can be incredibly powerful in building intrigue. Think about how you can apply this in your own life, whether it's in your personal interactions or even in your professional life, when you're presenting a new idea.
Absolutely. It's about piquing someone's curiosity, making them want to know more.
So it's not just about what you reveal, but also what you keep hidden.
Precisely. It's about creating a sense of mystery, a desire to unravel the enigma.
Speaking of creating a desired image, let's talk about mastering the art of allure.
This is where we see how clothing and voice can be powerful tools of seduction.
Pauline Bonaparte, Napoleon's sister, was a genius at this. She used fashion to create a goddess-like presence, often evoking Venus.
Her wardrobe choices were legendary. She understood the power of visual impact, using clothing to distract, to suggest, and to create a larger-than-life persona.
Right. For example, the Duchess de Abrantes described Pauline's entrance at a ball in 1798. She said the room grew brighter as Pauline entered, and everyone was stunned by her beauty. It sounds like she knew how to make a statement.
She certainly did, and she wasn't alone in understanding the power of suggestion through clothing. Marguerite de Valois, the daughter of Catherine de' Medici, strategically used décolletage to highlight her famously beautiful breasts.
So it's not about being overtly revealing, but rather hinting at the sexual, creating a sense of excitement and intrigue.
Exactly. It's about leaving something to the imagination, sparking a desire to see more.
And a seductive voice. A seductive voice can be just as potent.
Absolutely. Think about Gabriele D'Annunzio, the Italian writer and notorious seducer. He was considered ugly by society standards, but his voice was his weapon. He used it like a musical instrument, captivating listeners with its hypnotic quality.
From the sources you provided, it seems he tailored his words to each woman's weakness, offering flattery that melted their hearts.
He was a master of suggestion. He knew how to create a mood, a feeling without being too direct. His victims would later recall, not his exact words, but the emotions he stirred within them.
This makes me think about how important it is to be mindful. Not just what we say, but how we say it, our tone of voice, and the way we phrase things can have a huge impact on how we're perceived.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the subtle nuances of communication and how they can be used to create attraction.
Now, moving beyond the siren, it seems there are specific character types that naturally lend themselves to seduction.
Yes. Robert Greene outlines several seductive character types, each with its own unique approach.
Let's start with the rake. You've provided two contrasting examples, Casanova and, again, Gabriele D'Annunzio.
Casanova embodies the ardent rake, consumed by desire, and willing to go to any lengths for his conquests. He was a master of disguise and deception, always adapting himself to fit the situation.
The story of him spending the night in a chapel lost, enduring rats and discomfort, just to be near the burgomaster's wife, shows how far he'd go.
He was relentless in his pursuit, and he made himself into the ideal lover, adapting to each woman's needs and fulfilling her fantasies.
So whether it was providing adventure for the burgomaster's wife or intellectual companionship for Miss Pauline, he always knew what to offer.
Precisely. He understood the importance of tailoring his approach to the individual.
And then we have D'Annunzio, the demonic rake. He projected an aura of danger and mystery, which oddly enough made women feel safe.
He played on their desire for excitement, for a taste of the forbidden.
So there's not one right way to be a rake. It's about finding the approach that best suits your personality and leveraging it to its fullest.
Exactly, and it's important to note that these are just two examples. There are many other variations on the Reg archetype, each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
All right, let's move on to the natural. We have Charlie Chaplin, Emma Crouch, and Josephine Baker, all masters of using playfulness and vulnerability to disarm and attract.
What unites these figures is their childlike charm. They appeal to our desire for innocence, for a simpler time.
Think of Chaplin's iconic little tramp character. Bumbling, awkward, yet endearing. He tapped into people's longing for a more carefree existence.
Emma Crouch, with her reputation as a spoiled child, made men want to take care of her, to tame her wild spirit.
And Josephine Baker, even while performing in risque costumes, exuded a youthful energy and a naturalness that captivated audiences.
It was a mix of adult experience and childlike wonder. That proved irresistible.
So the natural seduces by making us feel less guarded, more open to experience. It's about appealing to that part of us that yearns for playfulness and spontaneity.
Yes, and it's worth noting that this approach is most effective when it's authentic. Trying too hard to be childlike can come across as insincere.
Right, it has to be a genuine expression of your personality. This makes me think about how important self-awareness is in seduction. Knowing your strengths and weaknesses allows you to choose the approach that will be most effective for you.
Absolutely. Self-knowledge is essential in any kind of interpersonal interaction.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the charmer, exemplified by Benjamin Disraeli.
Disraeli was a master of flattery and a keen observer of human nature. He understood that people crave validation and appreciation.
He managed to win over Queen Victoria, a woman who seemed like his polar opposite.
Yeah.
By indulging her ego and appealing to her repressed desires.
He understood that beneath Victoria's stern exterior was a woman who craved attention and affection. He played the role of the devoted servant, flattering her, making her laugh, and reminding her of her power.
He even transformed devious political reports into delightful fairy tales, calling her the Fairy Queen and casting her enemies as villains. It's amazing how he used charm to overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles.
And what's crucial here is that Disraeli wasn't being entirely fake. He genuinely enjoyed Victoria's company and saw the good in her that others missed.
So the charmer seduces by making us feel good about ourselves. It's about validating our worth, boosting our confidence, and making us feel special.
Precisely. But, like the natural, the charmer must be careful not to overdo it. Flattery that's too obvious can backfire and seem insincere.
Right, it's about finding that sweet spot between genuine appreciation and strategic flattery. It seems like a lot of seduction is about finding the right balance.
It certainly is. It's about reading the situation, understanding the other person's needs, and adjusting your approach accordingly.
Now let's delve into the realm of the star, with enigmatic figures, like the Countess Saint-Germain and Andy Warhol.
The star is all about cultivating an aura of mystery and allure, playing with image and theatricality.
The Countess Saint-Germain was a master of this. His origins were shrouded in secrecy. He claimed to be immortal. And he possessed seemingly magical powers. People were drawn to his mystique, wanting to believe in his impossible stories.
He understood the power of the unknown. By refusing to reveal too much about himself, he kept people guessing, wanting more.
And Andy Warhol, with his silver wig and blank expression, created a persona that was both captivating and elusive. He was a master of self-promotion, understanding the power of image. In a media-saturated world,
Both the Count and Warhol understood that fascination is often born from what we don't know. They gave people glimpses into their lives, just enough to pique their curiosity, but never enough to fully reveal their true selves.
so the star seduces by making us want more, by keeping us guessing. It's about creating a persona that is larger than life, a little bit dangerous, and always intriguing.
And crucially, the star must be careful not to become too accessible. Familiarity breeds contempt, as they say.
Right. It's a delicate balancing act, keeping people close enough to be intrigued, but far enough away to remain captivated.
Now, in contrast to these seductive types, we have the anti-seducer.
These are the people who repel us, who turn us off with their behavior.
And understanding the traits of the anti-seducer can be just as valuable as understanding the seductive types. It helps us avoid making the same mistakes.
So who are these anti-seducers?
Well, Lord Byron described the cold coquette, a woman who plays with men's emotions, leading them on and then pushing them away. She's cold, aloof,
Yeah.
and ultimately cruel.
Ouch. That sounds painful.
It can be. And then we have Sigmund Freud, who, in a letter to a pupil, advised strategic aloofness as a way to assert power by withholding attention and affection. You can make the other person crave it all the more.
That seems manipulative.
It can be if used improperly, but it can also be a way of setting boundaries and protecting yourself emotionally.
I see. And then there's Narcissus from Ovid's Metamorphoses, so consumed by his own beauty that he's incapable of loving anyone else. He's a cautionary tale about the dangers of vanity and self-absorption.
Exactly. Narcissus represents the ultimate anti-seducer. He's so focused on himself that he's completely oblivious to the needs of others.
So the anti-seducer can teach us a lot about what not to do. It's a reminder that seduction is a delicate dance. And pushing too hard or being too aloof can backfire.
Precisely. And it highlights the importance of empathy and consideration in any kind of relationship, whether romantic or otherwise.
I think that's a really important point. Seduction at its core is about connection. And connection requires understanding, empathy, and a willingness to meet the other person's needs.
I couldn't agree more.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. On the art of seduction, we've explored the siren archetype, delved into the different seductive character types, and even examined the traits of the anti-seducer.
We've seen how historical figures, like Cleopatra, Pauline Bonaparte, Casanova, and Charlie Chaplin, used various tactics to captivate and influence others.
And we've discussed how these principles can be applied in our own lives, whether we're trying to make a good first impression, build stronger relationships, or simply become more aware of the subtle dynamics at play in our interactions.
And don't forget, we've only just begun. There's so much more to explore.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dives, where we'll uncover even more secrets of the art of seduction.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the art of seduction.
It's amazing how many layers there are to this concept of seduction.
Absolutely. And in this second part, we're going to explore a particularly intriguing aspect, what Robert Greene calls regressive seduction.
Okay, that sounds a little intense. What exactly does that involve?
It's about tapping into our primal desires and creating a kind of emotional regression in the target.
So we're not just talking about fulfilling someone's conscious desires, but awakening something deeper, more unconscious.
Exactly. It's about creating an experience that transports them back to a simpler, more primal state where their inhibitions are lowered.
I see. And how does one go about doing that?
Well, one technique is to create a push and pull dynamic. Think about the relationship between Napoleon and Josephine. It was full of drama, tension, and uncertainty.
He was utterly obsessed with her.
He was. And she knew how to play him. She would push him away, withdraw her affection, making him crave her all the more.
So this sense of uncertainty, this fear of loss, actually heightened his desire.
Precisely. It's counterintuitive, but often the things that frustrate us the most are also the things that we find most alluring.
It's like the forbidden fruit, always tempting us. But isn't there a danger of pushing someone away too much?
There is. It's a delicate balancing act. You need to create enough tension to keep them interested, but also offer enough reassurance to keep them hooked.
So it's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Between challenge and reward.
Exactly. And that's where the next aspect of regressive seduction comes in, becoming the ideal lover.
Ah, yes. Casanova was a master of this.
He was. He understood that each woman has her own unique set of desires and vulnerabilities, and he was a master of adapting himself to each target, becoming a reflection of her ideal.
He provided adventure for the bored housewife, intellectual stimulation for the lonely spinster, and a touch of sin for the devout young girl.
Precisely. He fulfilled their deepest needs, the ones they might not even be consciously aware of.
This reminds me of something you said earlier.
Yeah.
About the importance of understanding your target psychology.
It's absolutely essential. You need to be able to read between the lines to understand what someone truly wants and needs.
And then there's this fascinating concept of the second virginity.
Ah, yes. This is about creating an atmosphere of youthful innocence, of first love, even for those who are jaded and experienced.
So it's about evoking a sense of nostalgia, a longing for a time of simpler pleasures.
Exactly. It's about tapping into that universal desire for a fresh start, a chance to experience the world anew.
The example you provided of King James I and George Villiers is a great illustration of this. Villiers, with his youthful beauty and charm, managed to captivate the aging king, creating a bond that was both romantic and deeply emotional.
It's as if he transported James back to a time of innocence, before the burdens of power and responsibility weighed him down.
This makes me wonder if this concept of the second virginity can be applied to other areas of life as well. Could it be used to reinvigorate a stale business relationship or breathe new life into a creative project?
I think it absolutely could. It's about finding ways to recapture that initial spark, that sense of excitement and possibility.
That's a great insight. Now we need to talk about the dangers the dangers of physical seduction.
Yes, this is an area where things can get tricky.
We have the example of La Belle Otero, a courtesan who used her physicality and sensual presentation to overwhelm her targets.
She was a master of creating a heightened, dreamlike state, using her body, her voice, her every movement, to create a sensual overload.
It sounds intoxicating.
It was, but it was also dangerous. Otero's seductions were often fleeting, leaving her victims drained and empty.
So while physical seduction can be incredibly powerful, it's important to use it wisely.
Exactly. It's about creating an experience that is both pleasurable and meaningful, not just a fleeting moment of gratification.
This brings up an important question. What is the role of ethics in seduction?
That's a great question, and I think the answer lies in the intention behind the seduction.
Could you elaborate on that?
Well, if the intention is to manipulate or exploit someone for your own selfish gain, then that's obviously unethical.
But if the intention is to create a genuine connection, to bring joy and pleasure into someone's life, then that's a different story.
Exactly. I think seduction can be a beautiful and powerful force when used with good intentions.
This makes me think about how important it is to be mindful of our own motivations. When engaging in any kind of seduction, are we doing this to genuinely connect with someone, or are we simply trying to get something from them?
That's a question we should all ask ourselves.
Now let's move on to the topic of maintaining the seduction. Once you've captured someone's attention,
This is where things get really interesting. Because seduction is not a one-time event. It's an ongoing process.
so how do you keep the spark alive, so to speak?
One key is to introduce variety and surprise into the relationship. Robert Greene calls this the antidote.
The Marquise de Merteuil from Dangerous Liaisons was a master of this, wasn't she?
Absolutely. She would alternate between warmth and coldness, passion and indifference, keeping her lovers constantly off balance.
So it's about creating a sense of unpredictability, making sure that your target never feels completely secure.
Exactly, because the moment someone feels like they have you figured out, the seduction begins to fade.
This makes me think about how important it is to keep growing and evolving in any relationship. If we become stagnant, if we stop surprising each other, the connection can weaken.
I agree, and that brings us to another powerful strategy. For maintaining the seduction, the power of sacrifice.
Could you explain what that means?
It's about demonstrating your devotion, proving that you're willing to go to great lengths for your beloved.
We have the example of the Chevalier de Belrose, who is willing to endure the Marquis de Merteuil's cruelty and manipulation, just to be near her.
And then there's Victor Hugo, who finally gave up his philandering ways after Juliette Drouet threatened to leave him.
So both of these men demonstrated their devotion through their actions, proving that they valued their relationship above all else.
Precisely, and this willingness to sacrifice, to put the other person's needs before your own, can be incredibly seductive.
It shows that you're not just in it for the short term, that you're willing to invest in the relationship.
Exactly, and that kind of commitment is incredibly alluring.
So what does this all mean for someone who wants to maintain a seduction?
It means that you can't rest on your laurels. You need to be constantly evolving, finding new ways to keep your target engaged and excited.
It's about creating an experience that is both pleasurable and meaningful, a journey that is full of surprises and delights.
Exactly, and it's about demonstrating your commitment, showing that you're in it for the long haul.
I think those are some really valuable insights. It seems like maintaining a seduction requires a lot of effort and creativity.
It does, but the rewards can be well worth it.
I'm eager to hear more about how these principles can be applied in other areas of life. Can we delve into that in the next part of our deep dive? We've spent the last two parts of this deep dive uncovering the secrets of seduction in a more personal context, looking at archetypes and strategies for one-on-one interaction.
Right, but these concepts can also be applied on a much larger scale. Think mass seduction, the art of persuasion and influence in areas like politics, marketing, and even art.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So we're essentially talking about how these principles of seduction can be used to influence large groups of people.
Exactly. It's about understanding what motivates people, what they desire, and what makes them tick. Then you can tap into those desires and use them to guide your audience towards a specific outcome.
It makes me think of those charismatic leaders who seem to have an almost hypnotic effect on their followers.
That's a great example. Think about someone like Andrew Jackson. During his presidential campaign in 1828, his supporters created an image of him as a man of the people, a war hero who had been wronged by the political elite.
They played up his humble beginnings, his tough guy persona, and his connection to the common man.
Right, and they use the media to spread this image far and wide, creating a wave of popular support that swept Jackson into office.
That's a brilliant example of tailoring your message to appeal to the specific desires and values of your target audience.
It is, and it highlights the power of storytelling, image making, and emotional appeal in the realm of persuasion.
Now, another master of mass seduction was Ronald Reagan, often called the great communicator.
Reagan understood that people are more swayed by emotions than by facts and figures.
He used humor storytelling and visual imagery to create a positive, optimistic mood, making people feel good about themselves and about America.
His team was masterful at controlling his image, crafting a persona that was both relatable and aspirational.
It seems like authenticity plays a big role here. If people sense that you're being fake or manipulative, they're less likely to be persuaded.
Absolutely. It's about being genuine in your intentions and letting that shine through in your communication.
This reminds me of something we discussed earlier about the importance of understanding your target psychology.
Yeah.
It seems that principle applies whether you're trying to seduce one person or a million.
You're exactly right. The more you understand your audience, the more effectively you can connect with them on an emotional level.
And speaking of connecting on an emotional level, you shared this fascinating story of Cindy Adams and Sukarno.
Oh, yes. Adams, an American journalist, was tasked with writing the autobiography of Sukarno, the president of Indonesia.
And Sukarno, known for his charm and charisma, used his powers of seduction to manipulate Adams.
He mirrored her behavior, indulged her moods, and made her feel like she was in control.
He even dyed his hair to match hers.
It's a remarkable example of how skilled seducers can use their understanding of human psychology to gain influence over others.
It's almost like a form of mental jujitsu, using the other person's energy against them.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights the importance of being aware of the subtle ways in which we can be influenced by others.
So it's not just about understanding how to seduce others, but also about recognizing when we're being seduced ourselves.
Precisely. It's about developing a critical awareness of the dynamics at play in our interactions.
This has been an incredible deep dive. We've explored the art of seduction from the intimate to the grand eye to text, uncovering the strategies and psychology behind it all.
And we've seen how these principles can be applied not just in romantic relationships, but in all areas of life.
I think the key takeaway here is that seduction at its core is about connection. It's about understanding what motivates people, what they desire, and finding ways to fulfill those needs.
And when done ethically and with good intentions, seduction can be a powerful force for good in the world.
It can help us build stronger relationships, achieve our goals, and make a positive impact on those around us.
So as you go about your day, remember to be mindful of the subtle dynamics of seduction. Observe how others use it and consider how you might use it yourself.
Always remember to use your powers wisely and ethically. Until next time, happy seducing.